You're listening to the Staffa Corner Podcast, a Staffa-tarian look at entertainment and life with your host, Greg Staffa.
My guest this episode is Jason Faunt. He is originally going to be a Major League Baseball player who traded it all in for acting. He stars in the upcoming short that's making the film circuit right now, An Old Friend. Jason, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
I never thought when I started doing this that I would be interviewing a Power Ranger, and you are the second Power Ranger I've had on this show, and so it makes it all that more interesting. I don't think I ever thought growing up I'd be interviewing Power Rangers, and so we might discuss that briefly.
But I love it. Who was the first, if I can ask?
The first is Brandon J. McLaurin, who was on the Power Rangers SPD.
That's right.
I covered his series Graceland for many years and got to know him, and so he came on and shared some stories.
Love it.
But tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Well, I was raised just outside of Chicago. And yes, I did play college and professional baseball. But, you know, the one thing I will say is I love that it says in there that I hung up baseball to be an actor. The truth is that I got released from playing baseball. I love that that's on there. I don't know who did that, but it makes me look better than I was. I was a very good college player, but struggled at the pro level. And I always knew once they finally kicked me off the field, I was going to just pack up my stuff and go to Hollywood. And that's what happened.
What was that like? I'm sure as a kid you grew up dreaming of being a major league player. You obviously had some talent. Was that a hard kind of choice to kind of separate things and go into something like acting?
Well, the truth is that I was a very, very good athlete. You know, I played at, a very high level of college. And then once I got to pro ball, I was a little overmatched, but you try and, slug it out as much as you can. I wanted to be an actor. I knew I wanted to think about acting my sophomore year in high school. That's where it first started for me. So that became my odd backup plan. My mom always laughs. She goes, "You always, you definitely swing for the moon. I mean, you want to be a pro baseball player and actor, two really high, low percentage success careers." So the second it was done, it was very hard because for my whole entire life that was my identity. And the second I was released, it was just like nobody cared where I was or what I was doing. There was no more classes to go to, no more sports to go to. So it was difficult, but this became my new, I want to say obsession. And I literally I had an old pickup truck with 250,000 miles. I had about $1,500 to my name. I packed up my stuff and headed out west. That's just how it happened.
One of the things that I found in talking to actors and actresses, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but a lot of them had an underlying childhood where they felt like they didn't fit in or they felt like an outsider, and acting was a creative outlet to kind of be outside their person. Was that something that you felt, or was it just something that you enjoyed doing?
I just enjoyed doing. I had a very good upbringing. I was a 3-sport athlete. I was very well liked. I had a great, my parents got divorced when I was young, and sometimes there's an acceptance of your father that might have come into play if you dig down deep. But my dad was always there for me. And so, no, I don't know. I watched Risky Business when I was a sophomore in high school, and I thought that looked like fun. That looked like it'd be a good time. So I think at that point, there was something that just kind of pushed me out west. I had a free place to stay with my best friend who went to USC. I had 3 months of free living. So he's like, "Dude, you got to get a job. So you got 3 months." And so I started waiting tables and going to acting class because I knew I knew nothing about the craft. And my rationale was always you couldn't just come on a baseball field and compete with someone like me or a football field. So, get in there and learn, respect this art. So I started studying at the best acting classes in town, and 2-3 years later started doing soap operas, and then eventually just kind of found my way.
I deeply admire what you did. You had one path, you chose the next path. I guess I personally would be mentally a little bit sensitive. I didn't make it out to where I thought I was going to be. I was on a different path. The acting industry is essentially job search every several weeks, every few months, every few years. I mean, you're lucky if you get a guest star on a spot. You're
Yeah.
lucky if you get, a series that you're on for a year. You're very lucky if you get on a series for a couple years. So acting is constant rejection, coming off of something where you had a path that you were hoping for in baseball to something where you're constantly having to prove yourself. Was that a challenge that you accepted and thrived on? Was that frustrating at first? What was kind of the mental attitude that you had to find to keep doing it? Because after a while, it's hard not to feel. At least I wouldn't feel kind of like, is it me or is it them?
Boy, Greg, you got some great questions. You know your stuff for sure. I think it was one of those things because I didn't stop to think about it. I literally, there was a gap. I mean, after I was done playing pro ball, my parents said, "Hey, you got one more year of college left. So before you do this acting thing," I love they call it the acting thing because they said, just finish up that last year of college. So I went back, got my degree, my business degree, and then I just did it. I think it was kind of just, I don't know. I think if I had started working or started a life back in the Midwest, it might have been hard to pull the plug. But because I had no attachments and nothing holding me back, I just dove in. I don't know. There was something about I don't know, something about my drive that's like, hey, this is the next thing, and maybe I wanted to achieve. I don't know. I don't know. Something about it, I just put my head down and went. So yes, that was there, but I knew that rejection was part of the game, so it's never really bothered me. I've never been afraid to audition. I've never been afraid to make phone calls and go into rooms. Maybe sports taught me that. Maybe baseball taught me that. So even though that is the case, that is how it works in that world, it's never really impacted me like that. I've always been, and still 25 years later, you're still looking for your next job, you know, still auditioning, still trying to make it work. I'm lucky with Power Rangers because I've got these Comic Cons, that I have this huge, um, there's, huge financial gains from being in the Comic Con world. So I'm lucky with Power Rangers that it can keep me going in between jobs.
And we'll get to that in a minute here. You
Sure.
said you started off doing soap operas. Tell us
Mhm.
a little bit about what it was like getting those initial roles after trying so long to make it. What was that like?
I started waiting tables in Malibu at a place called Gladstone's. I got a job at a real high end seafood restaurant right on the ocean. So it kind of gave me access to a lot of, actors and, good acting classes, good photographers to kind of learn. And the one thing I was smart enough on is I knew because I didn't know what to do to not to kind of sit back and just study and learn and try to observe. And everybody said, and this gets to your question, never be an extra, never be an extra. Once an extra, always an extra. But I kept thinking, well, if I want to be a baseball player, why not get into a dugout and watch the players, watch how they train, watch how they work, watch how they interact and handle themselves under pressure. So I thought, you know what? Everyone says don't do this. Well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be an extra so I can learn. I don't know what the etiquette is. So I got to be an extra on Sunset Beach. It's not hard to be an extra. There's always places to do it. Wanted to watch the professionals because I was an extra. There's a longer story behind it, but because I was an extra, that got me my first speaking lines in Sunset Beach, which was pretty cool because I was there. You're just in the room, right? You're making friends. So that led to getting some other auditions for Passions in Port Charles, and those were my first real roles. Sunset Beach was my first speaking lines, and then Passions in Port Charles, I was down to the final few for a 3-year recurring role. Didn't get it, but then they gave me these other roles, and yeah, I thought soap operas was going to be my journey. But then Power Rangers came along and kind of took me into the superhero world.
And nothing wrong with being an extra. I was an extra on a film, and it was the greatest probably month of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're jumping into Power Rangers. It's easy for a lot of people to mock and pick on Power Rangers. It's campy, it's whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of people that have successfully come out of being a Power Ranger. Amy Jo Johnson, Brandon J. McLaurin, yourself have made careers out of it. But there's also a great fan base cult following of people that really admire, look up to, embrace the Power Rangers. What was that like seeing the fandom and that kind of level of enjoyment in something that is easy for a lot of people to dismiss, but a lot of people really take it to heart?
Yeah, it's interesting because you get a job on a show, and you got to remember Power Rangers, as everybody knows, if they've seen like that movie, that documentary Hollywood Demons, everybody knows the story that it was, it's a very low paying job, obviously way more than waiting tables, but I think I made about 130 grand is my in the season of Power Rangers that I was on. But it was my only option. It was my only way to get out of the world of waiting tables. It was my only option to get out of the restaurant world, which I enjoyed doing. I embraced even that job. So we didn't think of it at the time of this superhero show that would last for 30 years and have this huge fandom. It wasn't even an option. As a matter of fact, I did the show, learned a ton, learned how to be on set, learned all about hitting your marks and finding the lens and finding the light. Learned all this stuff on etiquette you could never learn in acting class. When the show ended, I thought, that's it. The show's over. I'm going to move on. About a decade after, 12 years after, they called me and say, we want you to come to this thing called a Comic-Con. And I thought, well, what is a Comic-Con? They said, well, it's a kind of a celebration of Power Rangers. And I thought, well, nobody's going to want to meet me. I mean, I was on a show 10 years ago, and I'm going to be like the guy in college coming back to the high school prom. Everyone's going to say, what's this guy doing here? But they said, no, trust me. Your season has this real huge fan base, popularity, and we want you to come back. So I came back to this Comic-Con and I was shocked. Had no idea of the fandom and the love and support. And I thought, this is crazy. I meet Jason David Frank, and he was this guy that was this huge legend in this world and traveling the world. And him and I became very good friends. And then suddenly, just like that, it was boom, I was in 27 countries in the past 8 years. Just got back from Singapore a day and a half ago, everywhere from Saudi Arabia to Peru. I mean, I've been all over the world, so it's amazing, to answer your question, the fandom that's out there, the stories you hear, the impact you've had on people's lives. I don't know if there's any other show in the world that has this kind of connection with their fandom. So I love it. I embrace it. It's been a huge ride for me. They asked me to come back to the show tomorrow, I would be there.
And you have kids now. What is your reaction to learning that their dad is a Power Ranger?
At first, I don't think they got it. Of course, they didn't get it. And they loved all the girl Power Rangers. They thought the girls were the cool ones. And so they kind of shied away from it. But then their teachers started wanting autographs. And then their friends are like, your dad's the Red Ranger, as they got into like junior high. So then they started to embrace it. And now they think it's pretty cool. Now they're, one's in college. One just graduated from high school. She'll go to college here in the spring. And anytime their friends find out about it, they're like, what? Your dad's the Red Ranger? So they enjoy it. They don't let me do it because I always like to tell them their dad's a big deal to kind of kid them. But they enjoy it now. And my new kids are too little. They're still, 21 months and 5 months old. So they're not there yet, but they'll get there.
Let's talk about an old friend.
Mm-hmm.
I just talked to Nook, and he told me the first thing I need to ask you is, what is your inspiration behind the character?
What is my inspiration behind the character? He wanted you to ask me that?
That's what he said I should ask you.
When I read the script was running parallel to something that just happened in my life with the loss of my father. So the script is one of those things when I've always thought when I see actors say the script spoke to me, and I always go, yeah, okay. I mean, we as actors, we think we can play every role, and we always want to work, That's part of our journeys. We think we can do anything, and we need to make money to live. But this role was running parallel to my personal life in so many ways. And when I read the script, it was amazing. I did not see the ending of this coming, which is why this movie has become so successful. And there were just so many parallels. So the inspiration was very personal, not hard to find the emotion attached to it because I just gone through the loss of my father. And it spoke to me. So I was in.
As an actor, when we're looking for roles, I mean, you've done things now, Power Rangers blew up. When you're looking for roles between feature film or television, this was a short. I think a lot of actors tend to dismiss short films as kind of like I got better things to do on my Saturday than to film a short.
Yep.
Was it the ties to, your father and personal story? What was it that even made you give something like that a shot versus kind of dismissing it?
You know what? And I'll tell you what, Greg, I have always dismissed shorts. And that's what's kind of disheartening in my own mind, is that you always look at that as being some kind of a thing you do as a beginning actor. There's definitely no money in it, but the script was that good. I mean, it won a contest up there in Seattle for the screenplay contest, and the script was so good. And then I have a relationship with Ben Andrews, who's one of the producers. He's a very dear friend of mine. When I read it, he's like, "Hey man, we want you to play the role of Calvin." And I was like, okay, this is great. He's asking me to come up as a favor. You're not gonna make much money off this. You're gonna spend 2-3 days up there. As a new director, he's a young guy. I don't know much about this guy. I mean, how professional is this guy? But I just dove in with both feet. And thank God I did, because it opened my eyes to what these shorts are. They're up and coming directors and producers, and you meet great people. And this guy's been filming since he was probably 8 years old. I mean, he's so talented. And I don't say that lightly. So I was very lucky that I walked into an extremely professional, very creative group. And so I look at shorts much differently now.
One of the things that I'm realizing in talking to you, and I don't mean to inflate your ego or say anything that isn't true, but I'm finding a lot of your career choices are not based on other people's logic. It's based on your own opinions. It would be easy to, like you said, to dismiss a short. It'd be easy to dismiss something like Power Rangers, where you're, wearing some, weird superhero costume and going around fighting, weird monsters and stuff like that. I can see a lot of publicists or people saying, "No, don't do that. Look for real serious roles, or look for feature films and not a short." But your choices seem to be a lot based on your own intuition. Is that what drives you, or what are you looking for when you're taking on a role?
Greg, I'm very loyal. I've got that Midwestern side to me. So you'll see some of the projects I do. The first director that gave me my first break was David Dakota. And he got me, used to do a lot of like B-level horror movies. And my first role was my first real role was in 1997, doing a movie in Romania called Witch House, where very beginning of the movie, like in Scream, Drew Barrymore got killed in the very beginning, right? And David gave me that first shot. So he's come back to me with a lot of, the movie channel movies, kind of these small budget, Talking Pony, all these kind of campy family films. And it's like, David gave me my first break. So I will always go back. I look at it as paid acting class. So when I get a chance to work, I'm kind of done trying to, I'm going to be selective in my roles. Like, I love to work. I love to be on set. That's what I'm here to do. So if my schedule can allow it, and I'm not doing Comic-Cons, which is a lot more money than a lot of these projects, so I can afford to do that, I'll go on set and work, and I meet new actors, I meet new family. So I think loyalty has been a big part of the choices I make. If they're people I've worked with, friends, I'm in. The script is fun, and it's nothing gratuitous. I like to work, and so I'm going to be there on time.
You mentioned that Power Rangers had like a cult following to it, that you realized it took almost 12 years to realize it. And I would assume like things like the internet had a lot of that to do with that.
Yeah.
I talked to Nook about this, and you've been in Hollywood for a while now, but Matt Damon did an interview where he talked about how he could do a film like, We Bought a Zoo, and that would go, it would do okay, but not, a commercial success. But then would go on to DVD or VHS and make up a lot of the money, which then would allow him to do something like the Bourne films.
Yeah.
Nowadays, where are you seeing, or are you concerned about that DVDs aren't there anymore, VHS aren't there anymore, that revenue stream has dried up? Has it become harder to do these smaller stories? And is there a concern what the future might hold for Hollywood?
Yeah, I think there definitely is. I think it's changed. I mean, I think movie stars are a dying breed now. I always say Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt are kind of the last of it. The YouTube sensations, the TikTokers, they've become the kids that my teenage daughters know. So I don't know what direction it goes, to be honest with you. I'm such a small player in the grand scheme of it. But all I know is what I can control. And for me, that's where, heading up to Seattle and meeting a bunch of up and coming directors comes into play, and staying loyal to the directors I've worked with before is just to work. just to work, meet new people, and do the best job that I can. That's all I can control. But I do think that there's some concerns with Hollywood. I think for a lot of reasons, people have kind of, going to the movie theaters. I think things have gotten, you know, kind of politically divisive where people, some actors are outspoken and people don't like that. So I think all that stuff is in play with that. And so we'll see what happens. I think things are cyclical. I think things will bounce back. So in the meantime, I'll just keep holding on from my vantage point and try to enjoy the ride the best I can.
As someone that's been in Hollywood for several years now, if you were to be in charge of a studio for a day, what's one of the big changes that you would make that kind of restores some of that balance?
Original material. They've gotten away from original content. Movies like the example I always use is like Good Will Hunting, right? It's a movie where they did get one star in Robin Williams. Everybody else is pretty unknown. It was an amazing script, amazing story. Movies like that would be hard to get made right now. They like to recycle superhero stuff or recycle or just get names and stuff with bad scripts. But you gotta keep reading this original material. There's a lot of writers with a lot of great ideas, a lot of great content, and I think they've been afraid to make those little. I'm not sure what I would call it, but those kind of small budget films that can often be wonderful stories. And that's what I would do is give those movies a chance, read those scripts, let those newcomers come in so people don't have again, Good Will Hunting is the one. You have Robin Williams there. He's your kind of star and everybody else you don't know. And it's an amazing story and people love it. So I would do more of that kind of content.
How much of it is Hollywood, the bureaucracy, and to kind of put you on the spot a little bit, but you yourself said that you had a thing for shorts. How
Mm-hmm.
much of it is giving things like directors of shorts? Because you can go to film festivals and see all kinds of award-winning directors winning awards like Nook has won, but
Mm-hmm.
not getting a chance to do something a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
How much of it comes down to actors taking maybe more risks in some of the choices that they do, and how much of it is Hollywood bureaucracy that's creating kind of that gap there?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of it. I mean, you know, back in the day, it was hard to get A-list actors to do anything but just movies, and of course, eventually you see them doing print jobs, and I remember seeing Robert Downey in a Gap ad back in the early 2000s. They started to do all this other stuff, so I'm not really sure. But what I think is cool, and I think this is something that I would do, even if my name was, I've done well, right? But if my name was bigger, I think I would still do this here because this is I think as an actor, it's fun, and if you can do something that I guess might be considered below you at the time because you're not making much money on it to work with you, I think that's a good thing to do for someone that's had experience in Hollywood, and I think that's something more bigger names should do, right? Do those smaller projects, meet these younger actors. I think that's a good thing for everybody. So hard to tell, where it goes with that or how that happens, but I think that would help a lot in terms of where Hollywood's going is to have these larger name actors work with these new directors, and it gives them a chance, right? Gives them a chance.
Is streaming beneficial to Hollywood, or is it diluting product out there? Are you seeing more opportunities as an actor, or are you seeing things kind of being diminished along the lines there?
I think it's diluting it a bit because there's so many projects, and there's definitely more opportunity, but there's a lot of stuff, and I think because of it, it's harder for things to get noticed. I mean, you can film movies on your phone now, so there's just so much content out there. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, the streaming side, I think it is what it is. Hard to tell where it goes from here. But I do know that it's very easy to make content. There's a lot of stuff out there. So there's definitely more opportunity for people to just jump in and work on their craft.
And now that you are a successful actor, looking back at the transition you made from, being a ball player, what were some of the key what are some key words that you would use to describe that you need as a young actor to become an actor, to make that change?
Yeah, you got to embrace failure. You got to keep taking swings. You got to have thick skin and keep learning. The thing, I have all these young actors all the time, especially at Comic Cons that want to, and I gave them the same advice that Jason Alexander once gave me from Seinfeld. I waited tables on him once when I was at Gladstone's. He's like, just keep working. Don't worry about if it's a mattress commercial or whatever you can do to get on set. You can be paid and work. You're learning. You're sharpening your tool. You're getting better at your craft. So I always tell people that whole line, there's no such thing as a small part or small actors, is so true. Get on set, work on your craft. Don't worry about the size of the job. The bigger projects will come. So that's what I always tell people. Just keep getting in the arena. Keep getting in the arena, keep working, and have fun with it.
I can't remember who said it. I wish I could give credit to whoever it was. I remember listening to an actor talking about how it's not necessarily rejection when you don't get a part. You need to go see that film and see why you weren't chosen, because
Mm-hmm.
you might feel like you're perfect for this role, and then you go see the film and you see what the director had envisioned, and you go, okay, like Robert Downey Jr., he could be Iron Man, the guy from, whatever film he was doing prior to that, people
Mm-hmm.
didn't see it. Or Michael Keaton as Batman. People thought, he does comedies and he's silly. How could he become Batman? But then you see why the director chose these people. And it's
Yeah,
less a reflection on you failing, but it's more of a reflection of what they were looking for and understanding why you didn't get that role. It's not personal, but
yeah.
like you said, you have to have a tough skin. I can't imagine having a job search every few months or every few weeks to keep on putting food on the table and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's every day. And I think I learned very early that, if, once you understand how to audition, you get callbacks, the rest of it's really out of your hands. They'll start looking at how your height is versus the female lead. There's so many variables that come into play. Are you too skinny? Are you too muscular? And a lot of it, as long as you get the callback, you're doing a good job. The rest of it, there's so many things that are at play. And I learned early that's if you're getting the callbacks, you're doing your job, and so really all you could do. So yeah, I learned very early on that's not to be taken personal. And for some reason, it's helped me a lot.
And circling back to an old friend, we mentioned a little bit about it, but tell us a little bit about the story without giving away the ending or anything like that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what people can expect if they go to a film festival and see it playing.
Yeah, it's the story, and I'm sure Nuke went into this, but it's the story of this imaginary who gets created, doesn't know where he is or what's going on, but learns that he was created to be an imaginary friend to a child. Doesn't know who the child is, doesn't know why he's here. I'm dressed in this 1950s attire, 1940s attire, and I'm to be an imaginary friend of a child. And your only job, your only reason for existence is to be their friend. Whatever they want you to do, you do. So then when I realize this, I'm with all these other creatures and half cat, half astronaut. There are all these other, almost like the island of Dr. Moreau, all these combinations of kids' imaginations. So once I learn where I'm going, I get whisked through this portal to my kid, and I go into the hospital room of a 93-year-old man who's on his deathbed. And I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why this is my quote unquote child. And then it's the journey of this Kelvin character to find out why he's here, what's his relationship with this person, and to make the best of it because I'm here. So that's where the character finds himself. And without giving away the ending, it's he's there and he's just trying to make the best he can of the situation. And it becomes a journey about what happens to people as they get older, the people in their lives, the caretakers, the family, how they deal with people that get older and get sick and move on to the afterlife. And this guy Kelvin's role in that journey with this elderly man.
Oh, it's nice.
Yeah.
Now that you're a father, you have some young children, some children that have grown up a little bit. Does that influence the roles that you take and the characters that you're playing?
I mean, outside of an old friend and in new
Yeah.
projects? Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I would have to be very careful with, not that I was ever, doing anything that had gratuitous sexual content or anything like that, but I would say for sure, knowing my kids see it, I'm aware of certain roles, but it's not even that, I guess there are a few roles where, there might be some certain scenes, but yeah, I would stay away from certain things because I know they're going to see it. Yeah.
Does being a Power Ranger also come with certain responsibilities as far as how you decide to keep yourself in public? I mean, I'm sure as a parent, you're not too wild out there, but is there kind of an added underlying burden that's placed? I mean, I would hate to see, a Power Ranger getting arrested for lewd behavior or stuff like that, do you feel like there's kind of a added eye on you?
100%. And with the Comic Cons and that in the world and Power Rangers, I've kept a relationship with the franchise. They watch all that, and that's been a big factor as to why Power Rangers has invited me back. 5 different times now over the last 25 years. They watch how you are on social media to make sure you're still a great role model. They watch the way you take care of your body. So all that stuff. So I do feel a certain responsibility, the way that I look, the way that I act, to continue to do that for purposes of the show. And the same thing with the roles. I think I kind of lean towards taking strong character roles, more leading roles, and maybe that's kind of the superhero mindset of where I think that I am. But definitely there's a I wouldn't say a pressure, but a responsibility to continue to act a certain way because of that show. And there's so many kids that watch you that are a role model that it's something you don't want to show them a different side.
What is it about Power Rangers? I mean, there's the campiness, there's the silliness, the costumes, the bad guys are. What is it at its core that resonates so much with people when it could easily be dismissed as some other silly children's show?
Yeah. That secret sauce is kind of a mystery. I think what happens is that, they get kids young, and the colors of the outfits are the first thing that gets the kids. You got these outfits, these bright, vibrant colors. So the colors, boom, pull you in. The multi-ethnicity, multi-gender of the show. I mean, from the beginning, you've got heroes that are Black, that are Asian, that are white, that are Hispanic. So everybody feels that they have someone that if you're, a young Hispanic, child, you see in your hero someone that looks like you. So I think that really helped identify with a lot of young kids that they can be heroes as well. So I think that formula is what kind of pulls kids in at a young age. And the fact that it's been consistent for 30 years, I think kids get older and they will look back on those times when they were, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old and reflect on sometimes good times where they have great memories of watching the show, or even bad times at the show. I mean, I have a million stories I could tell you of things that kids went through that Power Rangers helped get them through, right? Abuse, divorce, sickness. And it was a magical time when they were 5, 6, 7 years old, and they held on to it and they continued to follow it and watch it. And these are your heroes. And so something about the show became a massive success, but I think it was the colors and the people that they hired for the roles, and it really pulled kids in.
Ever think of writing a book or anything about your experience on the
You know
Power
what?
Rangers?
I always thought that Jason David Frank should have wrote a book before he passed away. I used to tell him that because he had such success in this. So it's something that's crossed my mind. I guess I always think that I'm such a small player in the grand scheme. Who would want to read it? But maybe as time goes by, that I would feel differently about that, and there's definitely an adventure there, going from the baseball field to the superhero role. That how I got my SAG card, the journeys I've had, the stories I've had. 25 years in Hollywood of just being on the cusp of major success, but still holding on. There's definitely a lot of great stories there that maybe someday I would do something like that.
And outside of Power Rangers or even inside Power Rangers, any interest in writing, directing, anything like that?
No, ironically, no. I'm definitely not a writer. And I think that for me, directing is something I've never really leaned into. I always like to be the guy in front of the camera. I think that's something I've enjoyed, and I think I'm good at it. So I've never thought about directing or writing. No, never crossed my mind, to be honest.
And let's say Steven Spielberg approached you, said, "Hey, I'm a big Power Rangers fan. Love your acting. I'd love to give you Steven Spielberg money. Let's do a project that's passionate to you." What
Yeah.
story would you want to tell?
Boy, I tell you what, my favorite movie ever was The Natural with Robert Redford. So I think sports stories have a soft spot in my heart. So I think some sort of a sports movie. And I love the thought of a guy that's past his prime that gets that second chance. And The Natural would be, to me, the perfect screenplay. Something in that vein of the guy that gets that second chance in the sports world. But a sports movie, for sure.
Natural is
Yeah.
a classic.
Oh,
Wrapping things up, and again, I appreciate you coming on.
yeah. This is
When
great.
What advice would you give to a struggling actor? And I'm sure you've been asked this, and you asked Jason Alexander this. But what advice now, taking all the things that you've learned,
Yeah.
now you're at that diner table and the waiter is coming up to you, and instead of being the waiter, now you're the actor. What
Yeah.
advice would you give?
It happens a lot now for me. When I get on set with younger actors, when I meet people in public, conventions that want to be actors, I tell them the same thing. I kind of echo what Jason told me because I think it works well. Is don't be afraid to work on and just get on set. If you're an extra, if it's a small role, if it's a mattress commercial, just get on set and get in the best acting classes you can afford because you're going to start to meet people in your circle. You're going to rise up with your peers. So that's always my thing. Just get on the field. Don't be afraid of the small roles. Just keep working. Be on time. Be a good person, and things are going to work out. And I always tell them, well, the other thing I always tell them, Greg, is, in today in life, the young kids, I mean, everything is immediate. If you want food, boom, it's at your door. If you want to go, if you want food, if you want deodorant, Amazon, it's like, it takes seconds. If you want to date somebody, boom, the dating apps. It's all so easy. But this career is not. They see TikTok, they see what they think is overnight sensations. They all think they can be stars. They go, you're an actor. Be prepared to be broke and be prepared for the long game. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So just hang in there, stick around, and that's the advice I always give them.
And wrapping things up, and again, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
An old friend is available on the film festival circuit, so you can check it out if one's coming to you. Do you have any other projects coming up that fans can look forward to seeing you in?
Yeah, so Legend of the White Dragon is the movie I did with the late Jason David Frank. That was his last project before he passed away. That's gone through about 3 years of post-production, but that's finally done. That's going through the distribution phase now. So look for Legend of the White Dragon. That'll be coming out shortly. I just got the role of playing Batman in the very, very popular Bat in the Sun series. They get 30 million views in their superpower beatdown. So next month I'll be donning the Michael Keaton Batman suit against Shredder. That's going to be very exciting to be in the Batman suit.
On.
Yeah, and then the last one is I'm producing a cartoon called The Brush Brigade, and that's an animated cartoon for kids about the Tooth Fairy's daughter. So very excited to. We've got a few Power Rangers that are coming in to voice those characters. Some of the characters. We've got some of the writers from Power Rangers. So the Brush Brigade is coming soon. The pilot episode will be done here in the next couple of weeks. It's been about 3 years now, 2 years now. But we got the pilot episode coming soon, and then we're going to get that thing out there and see if we can't make our own Paw Patrol.
Nice. And my final question.
Yep.
Final question I asked all my guests. So often when we're dealing with actors and actresses, we say, Jason Faunt, Power Ranger, Jason Faunt, Major League to acting. We use the things that you are known for, the roles that you've played. But when you get up in the morning, the kids are still asleep in bed, you go into the bathroom, splash a little water on your face and look in the mirror for the first time. Who is it that you see in the mirror?
Ooh, who is it that I see in the mirror? What a great question, Greg. You got some great questions. Man, I feel like I just see this Midwestern boy who's still trying to live a dream. I'm happy with where I am. I'm enjoying the journey, but I just see this dad who's just trying to make his way, and I think I'm still trying to find who I am, to be honest with you. But I look at myself as a doting father, and God, who do I see in the mirror? I think that would be it. Just a guy from the Midwest who's trying to find his way out here and enjoying the journey.
Jason, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing what the future has for you.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it, buddy. Best of luck to you as well.